Clay and Sean Pickering, who are two New York-based researchers. And what they told us isn't new to the extent that it has not been reported before. Michael Sala has reported this story. It's been reported on the Open Minds Forum. It created a little bit of a stir about 18 months ago when they reported that they'd been contacted by a US Navy source who disclosed the reality of meetings in the United Nations. One meeting in the United Nations behind closed doors that was disguised as something else, but was really a meeting about preparing internationally for the disclosure of the extraterrestrial reality. And after that it went to a number of other venues in various places. Based upon the principle that if there is to be disclosure to the world's population, the Americans have got to be in agreement with the Russians and the Chinese and the Germans and the French and the Brits and the South Africans and the Australians and everyone else about how they're going to play this story out. Because when you're South African, if the American president makes a statement, then the next thing that will happen is that the South African president will be asked the same question by the South African press saying, what do you know about this? He's got to give the same answer. And so otherwise you've got a real problem, because you've got people giving different accounts. And what account to give and what to say and how to say it apparently is being discussed at very high levels and has been for at least 18 months and probably for much, much longer than that. When Clay and Sean Pickering contacted us, this is all on the Project Camelot site, they referenced our interview with Stephen Greer, and we've had a lot of interesting feedback about that. Some people really didn't like it. It's like, how could you challenge this guy? How could you be so belligerent? How could you disagree with him so strongly when it's just meant to be an interview, they said. And Clay and Sean Pickering said, this is the best interview you've ever done, because the level of passion and disagreement and intelligent debate and heated intelligent debate mirrors exactly what is the reality behind closed doors at the highest level of policy. They said this is completely representative of the angst and the disagreement and the concern that there is among good people at highest levels of policy. They don't have the answers to these questions either. They don't know who they can trust. They don't know what to say. They don't know what it means if somebody comes along saying, I'm an ET, here's some technology and we're giving it to you because we like you. Now, of course, I'm saying that in a sort of playful way, but how can we understand and how can we be sure of the agendas of these beings? Some of them will be genuinely friendly, and others may not be. And it's very, very important to make the right decisions about these, and it's very, very important to give people the right information. And I think that whoever it is who's pushing for this disclosure, and it is coming, I believe, something's coming. We don't know when, and we don't know what, and we don't know how much truth it's going to contain. Pete Peterson, when we spoke to him in the end of June of this year, told us that he had been told by his own source. Now, let me back up a little bit here, because this has become an internet rumor that's kind of gone wild. And I'll just repeat again exactly what he said. He said that he had been told by a source of his that television time had been booked for the 27th of November across many networks in which Obama was planning to make an announcement. And then after that, he immediately said, just because it's planned, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. We spoke to him a short while ago, and he said he'd give it 50-50. It's just his personal guess. This is the information that David Wilcock was referring to when he went out on quite a long, thin limb on Coast to Coast. Now, we love David, he's a good friend of ours. He may know things that we don't know, but based upon what we were all told by Pete Peterson at the same time, I would not have said something quite so strongly as David did. The problem is with making a prediction like that is that, like Blossom Goodchild last year, you get to look a little bit silly if you're wrong. So I want to present this with every caveat I can think of, that who knows whether it's going to happen the 27th of November. It looks like, if they were going to make a run up to this, they should be saying a little bit more than just they found water on the moon. It sounds like there are several other intermediate steps before they say something. Claire and Sean Pickering tells us that the heated debates behind closed doors are still going on and they're not close to being resolved yet. My personal feeling, and I do want to say this on record, is that we're not going to hear anything on November 27th. I'd love to be wrong, but I think it's too early. I think that may have been hopeful. It may well have been booked, but who knows what other provisional bookings they've made for the coming months. We just don't have that information. Pete Peterson doesn't know either. He's just reporting what he was told. And it's coming. We don't know when. We don't know what we're being told. And some people in the disclosure movement think, right, our long battle for 30, 40, 50 years is going to be, ever since Roswell, is going to be over as soon as the president or whoever it is makes his announcement to the White House press corps. And I would say, well, actually that's where it might just begin, because we don't know what they're going to say. We don't know how some of those questions are going to be fielded. We don't know what happens after that. And there may be a whole new game on in terms of, oh my God, they've told us this and we know that that's not true. But now everyone in the world is believing it comes from the president's mouth, so now we're into a new level of problem to deal with in terms of what's true, what's not true, what's being reported, what do people believe, how is this making people react, and why are they doing all this. You have to see this whole thing as a chess game, and a chess game can be played out in many different ways. It could be a distraction to give people something to get fascinated with for several months while this all comes out, while meanwhile they're doing their microchipping quietly on the other. I mean, it'd be a wonderful way to take the heat off the swine flu debate by suddenly announcing that ETs are real. All of a sudden this thing about whether or not children should get vaccinated starts to feel not very interesting. It's much more interesting and sexy to talk about this other stuff. They could be doing it that way. There are so many things happening at once at the moment. The 2012 movie was released just a few days ago. I haven't seen it yet. I'm told it's not very good, but it's very spectacular. But they've released that for a reason. And there is definitely a plan to drive us into fear, because fear makes us easier to control.